At home, mom family. It's your mom mentor and caregiver coach, Melissa. Welcome to episode 2 of the Caregiver Coffee Chat podcast. And allow me to bring my guest up here. Just a minute. All right. Let's see here. I'll just wait for our guest to get on and we will get started. Okay. Let's see here. Hang on. All right. We'll just give it a minute and we will get started. There she is.
Hi. Hey,
Hi.
Melissa.
Hi. Good morning, Dr. Owu.
Good morning.
All right. Well, everyone, welcome to episode 2 of the Caregiver Coffee Chat podcast. I am so excited this morning to have a repeat guest. This is Dr. Francesca Owu. She is a licensed professional therapist. And in part 1, we talked about managing your chronic illness and the impacts that it can have on your life, both in terms of a relationship, if you're married or with a significant other, and also just personally for you, if you're the one that's dealing with a chronic illness. So now for part 2, we're going to be talking about the importance of self-care, because it is so important, both in terms of as a caregiver standpoint and in your relationship, but also just for you. I mean, let's face it, we really cannot fill from an empty cup. It just does not work. So anyway, I'm going to turn the floor over to Dr. Owu again to let her introduce herself a little bit before we dive into our interview. So take it away, Dr. Owu.
Hi, everyone. You can call me Dr. Owu, Dr. O, Dr. Fran, Dr. Francesca. I go by many names. So I've been working with individuals who have chronic illness, primary caregivers, and their families for about 14 years now. And I've been dealing with chronic illness and caregiver life for about, I was going to say my age, just no, 30 plus years at this point. It's something that I find to be really enjoyable, not only from working with my clients, but personal experience and being able to help other individuals who have a chronic illness or are caregivers, especially millennial caregivers.
Absolutely. And I'm so excited that I'm having you on this podcast because I'm all about being passionate. I'm all about giving resources to my moms and other younger spousal caregivers and just raising awareness for chronic illness because it can happen at any age, any demographic of life. And I don't think people really understand the mental, emotional, and spiritual toll. Besides the obvious is the physical, right? But the mental and emotional impact of a chronic illness, both whether it's you yourself that have been diagnosed or it's your significant other, it's very different. And especially it's different when it's the standpoint from a relationship. And I love that you're making that a priority because when you think about the impact of a chronic illness on a relationship, you're not just thinking in terms of the physical aspect in terms of not being able to work, not being able to help out with the kids, maybe not being able to drive. But then there's the impact of the intimacy level. There's the impact of the grief and loss of how you thought life was going to be for you and your family. And that takes a hit. That's a big hit for anybody to go through.
Absolutely.
And then to take on the aspect of just the toll it takes on you on your mind and your soul and your body. How can we keep our cup full when we're dealing with those situations, I think is critical. And one thing that I love about having you on here too is that since you are professionally trained to deal with the trauma, the stress, mentally and emotionally that goes with having a chronic and managing a chronic illness, I think it's so awesome because sometimes we need a third party person to help us through that situation. We as loving and well-meaning as our family and friends are, we need a third-party person that gives us a safe place to let us vent, shout, do whatever we need to do, right, to deal with the situation. Because sometimes when someone, I know this is for me, but let me know if this is you as well. Sometimes I've been in a situation where I really don't need a third-party. I need a third-party person to not because they're not biased with it being so close to the situation. So. Let's segueing into our questions. Can you tell us a little bit about your story, and with your business, especially with what really drove you specifically to want to work with helping couples individually or specifically with
Mhm.
the coping of the impact of a chronic illness, and what advice do you have for them or anyone listening or watching in dealing with the chronic illness in terms of
Mhm.
self-care? How can they keep their marriage full, their relationship full?
Mhm.
How can you keep your cup full if it's you that's dealing with the chronic illness or you're caregiving for someone with a chronic illness, especially not just logistically on the physical side, but more importantly, I think it's important to tap into the mental and emotional side.
Okay. So I'll start with the first part is how I got started with this in the first place. So I've always been interested in marriage and family therapy. Just as a child, watching my parents who dealt with a child who has sickle cell disease, and my father also has sickle cell disease. So my mom presented as the primary caregiver. So me being on the outside looking in, this is something that I've always seen. So it kind of lit a fire in me to make sure that I am kind of continuing what it is that we started in our family, being able to take care of one another. So that led me into seeking out programs that specialize in marriage and family therapy. So then when I got there, I knew from the beginning, from the start, every paper that I write, it's going to be focused on chronic illness and caregiver coping. So it was just a great segue into writing my dissertation and my research focus because it was always there. It's always been there. So then moving into couples, in the 14 years I've been doing this, none of my clients have ever asked, "Are you married? Do you have children?" Which is great. That means I'm doing my job right, right? So I
Absolutely.
always talk about like with spousal caregiving, whether you are a spousal caregiver taking care of a spouse who has a chronic illness or taking care of a child with a chronic illness, it really affects the intimacy in the relationship. So if you are, and majority of primary caregivers, 68% are women. So if you are taking care of a child who has a chronic illness, this can take a toll on the family unit as a whole, the financial dynamics, the emotional dynamics, and just the psychological dynamics. So let's just parse this out a little bit. Spouse taking care of a child with a chronic illness. Sometimes the spouse could be enmeshed with the child, and the child is their main focus and their only focus, which means your spouse is completely out of the picture. So spouse is feeling as if they are being left out. If there's a healthy child within this family unit as well, child is feeling left out because child might not know what's exactly is going on. And you can
Mm-hmm.
also say the same thing if you are caring for a spouse with a chronic illness. As parents, we tend to keep things within the parental unit, forgetting that there's other individuals after us that might need some sort of explanation. So as parents can say, "Oh, they don't know what's going on. They're only a child." I can guarantee you when you're saying that, your child will come into session and tell me everything that's going on in your household. So
Yeah.
children see and they know a lot. So it is okay to explain to a child what is actually going on. There's so many books you can find on Amazon to explain this is what's going on with your sibling or this is what's going on with your parent or your guardian so that the young child can begin to understand what it is that's going on. And as for the person that is the caregiver, it's also important to communicate. Sometimes couples have a very difficult time communicating how they're feeling, especially when it comes to intimacy, and not just sexual intimacy, but emotional intimacy. Instead of not talking to your spouse about how you're feeling because there might be a level of embarrassment because of the illness, it's okay
Absolutely.
to communicate to them that this is how I'm feeling right now. Can you give me some time to actually get it together?
I love that.
Instead,
Yes, I love that. And I love that you mentioned about the kids because speaking from my experience, I am a mother, I am a
mhm,
wife, but I'm also a spousal caregiver. And my
mhm,
daughter is 3 years old, and our
yeah,
journey with my husband's epilepsy started 2 years ago, and it
mhm,
was right before she was one. And
mhm,
so for that first year in 2020, she maybe couldn't verbalize what was going on, but she would
mhm.
be scared when she'd see the EMTs come into our house and take her father away, and she didn't understand why.
Absolutely,
And
absolutely.
but then there was the more, but then she could tell, even at
Hmm.
that age, she could tell something was wrong. And
Absolutely.
there was so many times when my husband would be in seizure activity that she would just come and sit on, I remember there was one time he passed out and was on the floor in the living room of our apartment, and she just came and stroked his head. And it was the sweetest thing. So
Yeah,
she was trying to make her father better
exactly.
in her own way. So I
Yeah.
do definitely think that is so important. And I'm so glad you hit on
Hmm.
that, that regardless of how old your children are,
Hmm.
they are totally aware of the trauma of what is going
Absolutely.
on, even if they can't
Absolutely.
verbalize it. Because I know with my daughter specifically, she is verbally delayed because of the pandemic, being isolated home, and we have her in speech therapy, and that's a whole
Hmm.
nother story in of itself. But still, the concept is that she's still aware,
Exactly.
and I think it's so
Exactly.
important that we normalize that we clue
Hmm.
our children in, like, they're scared. It's not
Absolutely.
normal that our
Absolutely.
children are scared
I can assure
when,
you that
yeah.
at 3 years old, she knows what's going on. There's so many vivid memories I have of my sibling and I being separated and me not knowing what's going on, and
Hmm.
then being sent to school as if nothing is going on. But then also knowing that I had elders in my life and teachers who would ask me, "Hey, how's everything going on at home?" I'm like, "I don't know." And I remember one teacher specifically saying to my parents, "You have to tell her what's going on because she doesn't understand it."
Hmm.
And my parents, once again, with having a chronic illness or being a caregiver, there's a level of secrecy that goes on within families at so many levels. Secrets from your spouse, secrets from your children who might have the chronic illness, and also secrets from the child who doesn't have the chronic illness. So no one seems to know. The left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing,
Right.
and that leads to so much dysfunction and so much miscommunication that we don't know how anyone is feeling because we're not actually talking about it.
Right. And I think that's the important thing. I know from my husband and I, we've struggled with, we've leveraged counseling in our marriage, and I'm thankful for that too. We'll get a safe third party,
Mm-hmm.
professionally trained resource to help us navigate those complex, overwhelming feelings. I mean, when you're dealing with trauma, when you're dealing with an unexpected situation, it's overwhelming, it's scary, you don't know how to process, it's new, so that makes it really scary.
Right.
So how can we, Dr. Owu, how can we normalize this? How can we even just start the conversation? Maybe your spouse has had a bad experience with,
Mm-hmm.
say, a counselor or therapist in the past, and they're
Mm-hmm.
not open to that resource.
I
What?
apologize to everyone who has had a bad experience in therapy because I hear that quite often with individuals who come in with chronic illness saying that the therapist did not understand truly what it meant to have a chronic illness. And that's why the clients sought me out because they read my bio and noticed that I do have a chronic illness. There's
Hmm.
a level of understanding that an individual will not have if you don't have a chronic illness. You can understand, you can empathize because you're a therapist and you're trained to do this, but knowing the emotional turmoil that a person is going through, for example, I deal with a lot of women who have fertility issues. Knowing the turmoil that she's going through. You're laying on a bathroom floor late at night, throwing up, vomiting. No one knows what's going on with you. You're always in pain, but you're conditioned as a society to tell us that we have to have a smile on our faces. As women, no matter what we're going through, we have to still keep pushing through and keep going, right? So then I
Right.
always tell my clients that if you're interested in couples counseling, please seek out a therapist who knows, or even just doing consultation with a therapist and seeing the vibe that you get with the client. I do phone consultations, and I always let the clients know I have a sense of humor. That's one thing you're going to know about me right off the bat. And I also have a chronic illness, and I'm a caregiver. I don't want you to come into therapy thinking that it is going to be gloom and doom for
Right.
1 hour straight because that takes a toll on you. But I also let them know that there's going to be times that you don't like me, and that's okay. A lot of people don't like me. I can roll with that. But I'm here to help you navigate the chronic illness, make sure that your spouse understands what it is that you're going through. Everybody else in the family knows what you're going through because the chronic illness doesn't just affect the person who has it, it affects the entire family unit. So if we're
Absolutely.
good at the parental level, then that means everything underneath us is going to be fine as well. So it's just opening up the means for communication. And I can tell you right off the bat, it's going to be awkward as hell. I know individuals come into therapy and they think we're digging into your life. Yes, we are. We have to. That's what we're trained to do. And I'm also very honest with my clients. It's going to be very awkward changing the way you communicate with each other and changing the way that you ask for what it is that you need, changing the way that you just communicate with your spouse in general. So if you are a spousal caregiver, it's okay to tell your significant other, hey, you know what? I need a little bit of a break today. I'm tired. It happens. we get tired. And once you start compounding on all of these issues, you're more than likely to have a blow up, pouring from an empty cup, right? And you just keep
Mm-hmm.
bare knuckling, white knuckling it, and just trying to make it through. But there's going to be times when you just can't do that. So that's important for you to have a support system of friends. Understand this concept of your spouse is your best friend. Hey, you're not going to tell your spouse, I can't stand you today. You know, some people do that. That's your business. If that's how you communicate and it works for you, that's your business. But there's going to be times when you don't want to speak to your spouse about certain things. Have that list of the circle of friends that you can talk to about, this man is really getting on my nerves today.
Mm-hmm.
Talk about it, vent about it. But when you come home, let's try and get it together, because the person with the illness also doesn't want to feel as if they're a burden, because that's also
Absolutely.
another issue that you have to deal with. If they're feeling like a burden, they're not going to talk to you about
Mm-hmm.
how they're absolutely and truly feeling. They're going to say things like, oh, I'm fine today. But depression also hits individuals with chronic illness and anxiety. Anxiety hits because you never know, especially if it's an illness where there's a sudden onset. You never know what's going to happen. That builds anxiety, and that could actually exacerbate your chronic illness. And also symptoms of
Mm-hmm.
depression, which worsens the chronic illness, because you just don't want to get out of bed and do anything at all, which is
Right.
not good for the body. If you're not moving, if
No.
you're not physically moving, and you are just like a lump on a log, it takes atrophy, just takes a toll on the body. You know, I can tell you that
Mm-hmm.
firsthand.
Right. I love that. I know for me, quitting my career, building a new career, dealing with a toddler, dealing with, like you said, a chronic illness where we never know when an onset of a said symptoms with, like,
Mm-hmm.
speaking to what I know about epilepsy, you never know when the other shoe's going to drop. That's
Mm-hmm.
stressful, and that's not a fun
Right.
way to live. There's this element of
Mm-hmm.
underlying fear that you deal with every day. It's like I always look at my phone. I don't know how many times a day if my husband's at work to make sure I'm not getting a call from him or his
Mm-hmm.
work saying that I need to come and pick him up because he's had a seizure. I deal with just, constantly looking, and like I hear a sound in the house, like, oh my gosh, is that my husband? Does he need
Yeah.
something? There's that extra stress that the average person
Mm-hmm.
just doesn't understand and deal
Mm-hmm.
with, that when you're not dealing with a chronic illness, and that's hard. And so I definitely, going back to what you said about picking a therapist or a counselor that does actually have or is dealing with the situation that speaking to what we are speaking about chronic illness, that is
Mm-hmm.
important. Like-minded people are a lot better at helping get you results and
Yeah.
support because they've walked through it. I know for me as a mom, the whole reason I exist is because I couldn't find a said mom caregiver coach, support coach when I started my journey 2 years ago, because everything was more
Mm-hmm.
targeted at women who had chosen to be stay-at-home moms because their
Mm-hmm.
spouse made a good income, or that they were caregiving, but it was more for a chronically ill child. I'm not saying that that's
Mm-hmm.
not a bad thing. I'm glad that resource is there. Or it was more the dynamic that it was the resources I could find were caregivers who were caring
Mm-hmm.
for the demographic that we expect in terms of aging parents, aging grandparents. But what about young moms who have to just cold turkey leave their career or make that choice?
Right.
Do I quit my career and transition home, or do I try to outsource help? I
Mm-hmm.
want to be that for
Mm-hmm.
somebody, right?
So
And
these are
yeah, I
the
love, I
this is
love
a
that
new
you're doing it.
pattern.
This is a
This is
new
a new
pattern.
pattern that we're
Yes.
seeing, is that millennials are becoming caregivers earlier and earlier, taking care of elderly parents or taking care of a spouse or a partner
Mm-hmm.
that has fallen ill. And it's definitely, I don't want to say it's a new phenomenon. I'm pretty sure this has happened before, but this is something new that we are experiencing within our lifetime. And I'm pretty sure the pandemic has highlighted a lot of things that are missing in our society, like communication being one of them,
Right.
intimacy being one of them, how to have platonic relationships. There's so many things that the pandemic highlighted that we're missing from our society. Oh, and great thing to say that it is World Mental Health Day. So it's important for us to sit back and think, how are we dealing with our mental health? And also extending yourself grace. Having a chronic illness is hard. Being a caregiver is hard. How are you taking care of yourself? What are some things that you do first thing in the morning to kind of get your mind right for the rest of the day? What do you do at the end of the day to wrap your mind around what has possibly occurred during the day? I know sometimes before my sessions, I have to make sure that everything is okay. And if something is going on, which has happened at some point in time, I have to make sure I maintain my composure before I get in to see my clients. And one thing my advisor always said was like, you're always able to maintain your composure no matter what's going on around you. I'm like, yeah, because I have to focus on the person that's in front of me. They're not coming in and wanting to see their therapist project in any sort of way. We don't want to see
No.
any transference. We don't have time for that. So it's important for you to maintain your composure when you're coming into session, because these individuals are leaning on you. They need you. They
Right.
came to you for a reason. So going to therapy is one of the best gifts that you can give yourself. It's a great investment in
Hmm.
talking to someone who has this unbiased opinion about what it is that you're going through. You can
Right.
come, it's a judgment free zone. You come in, you talk about what you need to talk about, you process what you need to process, and you're leaving with actual concrete tools that you can just implement in other parts of your life.
Right. And I love that you said, like, what are you doing for yourself every
Mm-hmm.
day? Because I know I just actually did a reel about this morning.
Mm-hmm.
This is just so aligned. Thank you, Lord.
Mm-hmm.
But it is so important that we take time for ourselves every
Mm-hmm.
day. I know personally for me, I deal with hypothyroidism and IBS, and I was really experiencing an IBS flare over the weekend. So lots of extra, I
Mm-hmm.
took extra medicine, let myself sleep, just let
Right.
myself be lazy, because I need to because I have that pressure to keep my cup full as a caregiver and as a mom and a businesswoman, right? So there's just a lot that I have to keep up on. So for me, the thing that helps me keep a level head and keep my tone
Mm-hmm.
and set my tone for the day is that 30 non-negotiable 30 to 45 minutes every morning that I spend time with the Lord, where I'm doing my devotional, getting into
Mm-hmm.
my Bible, getting into my lesson, and just being intentional. And even
Absolutely.
even
Mm-hmm.
if it's not, besides doing that every day, what are some times throughout the week that you can just have non-negotiable time for you? One
Mm-hmm.
thing that's been helping me, that since we're segueing into counseling or therapy or support, another good idea here would be even just to get into your plug into your community of faith. What I have done is join a Moms Connect group in my church. We meet once
Mm-hmm.
a week. They do have morning sessions, but it just doesn't work well with my schedule. So I've been
Mm-hmm.
going on Wednesday nights. We have Wednesday night dinner as a church. We break up into our classes at 6:30. My daughter goes upstairs to the preschool program, and she's loving it. So
Mm-hmm.
how can you make non-negotiable time daily, because you need to fill your cup every day, but then
Right.
maybe how can you implement some extra
Mm-hmm.
non-negotiable time throughout the week,
So,
be it
right.
therapy, be it getting into your church or community of faith, or any other creative outlet that can
Right.
feed your mind, your body, and your soul, because we're human beings in
Mm-hmm.
human bodies with emotions. And if we're not finding a way to express them and release them, we're going to tap out in a very
Exactly.
unhealthy way.
Exactly. So
Anger is real.
the God's honest truth is that sometimes it's hard as heck, and sometimes you can't find that time. I had
Right.
to sit back and think about this even before I came on today. And one thing I will not do is lie to the audience. There's times when I don't get to focus on me until 8 p.m. at night, and that just happened a couple of days ago. And I sat down at my computer. I always at 7:30 I kind of shut down. I have my essential oils. I just stand in the bathroom for about 30 minutes and do what I need to do and just take it in and try to process the day's events and things that I could have done differently. And I noticed I was like, it's 8 p.m. I'm just now sitting here to take care of myself and do something for me. Oh, this is a lot. I don't want this to be a continued process. So what can I change throughout the day? Who do I need to talk to and who do I need to communicate with in order to make sure that this isn't a constant, especially with the caregiver or the person who has a sudden onset of an illness and the symptoms? You never know what's going to happen. So you always have to be prepared. But there's also a level of anxiety with always feeling that you need to be prepared for something.
It's stressful, right? It's
It's
so
very stressful.
stressful.
It's
Yeah,
very
living
stressful.
just wait, like I said, the best way I can describe it, or the best way
Mm-hmm.
that our doctor put it. I love how he said or shared this. He said, when you're dealing with a chronic illness, and specifically to what I know about epilepsy, in terms of finding treatment and just day to day dealing with it, it really throws
Mm-hmm.
out like you're throwing spaghetti at the
Yeah.
wall. You're throwing spaghetti
Mm-hmm.
at the wall. You never know where it's going to hit. Is it going to hit over here? Is it going to hit over here? Is it going to hit over here? That's
Mm-hmm.
a really stressful and scary place to live.
It
And
is. It is.
while speaking to what I know about being a caregiver, both professionally as a CNA for 15 years and as a caregiver for my spouse, I wish I could tell you that, oh, if you do X, Y, and Z, you'll never have to worry about anything again, and that you can just have this
Exactly.
perfect plan of how
And
to
that
deal
is
with your
not,
chronic illness. It's not
it,
it's not real, is it? No,
it's not
it's not
realistic. And I
reality.
think for sometimes clients do come in and they just really want all the answers. And you have to
Hmm.
find what works best for you. And as a therapist, I'm literally holding your hand at some points so that you're
Hmm.
able to get through the difficult parts, the hardest parts of your life, having this chronic illness or being a caregiver. And the hard reality is there's going to be days where you just aren't feeling it. There's going to be days where you just want to stay in bed because life is difficult.
Hmm.
Life is not
Amen,
easy.
girl.
Life is
Amen.
difficult. So there's going to be times when you're feeling like absolute hell. But you know what? It's also important for you to verbalize to the people around you, hey, you know what? I'm not feeling it today. I'm going to have to take a little break. I'm going to need some time. So I had to
Right.
tell, with taking care of my mom, there's a certain time that you cannot talk to me. I will put a sign on the door, hey, I'm working. Like I have the sign up now, so she'll leave me alone, which is great. So every now and then, let's be honest, between you and I and everyone else who's going to watch this, sometimes you just have to let them know, hey, I have to work today, but you're really in your office on vacation. Okay. You know
Right.
what? I've seen some of my friends have done it. Friends who are mothers, and they're just so tired because we don't consider postpartum depression after giving birth to children. And
No, of course
sometimes you
not.
just don't want to be around your significant other and you don't want to be around your children or the person you're caring for. So, hey,
Right.
you know what? I'm on vacation. Um, I have to, no, actually, I have to work. But in honesty, you're on vacation because you need that time away. You need time to just be yourself. You need time to just unwind. I know with me, I do like self care Sundays. Everyone knows do not contact me on Sunday because I'm doing my hair. I've done this for the last 12 years that I've been natural. On Sundays, I'm doing my hair. It takes like 7 to 8 hours. This is my time with myself to just be with myself. I'm not running errands for anyone. I'm not talking to anyone. I have my phone going with my music going. Every now and then, I might have a glass of wine, but after a while, I just, yeah, no, just
Yeah.
give me a smoothie or something. Okay. Like I
Right.
just don't care what it is. Sometimes I just really take joy in the fact that I have that time to myself. So I really look forward to my self-care Sundays and also self-care Fridays. My brother and
Right.
I joke around that you have such a routine that if someone wanted to kill you, they'd know exactly where you were and what you were doing at that time.
I love that.
I was like, yeah, you're right. I do have my
Right.
self-care Fridays as well. I'll have my favorite candle going right now. I have on my fall farmhouse from Bath and Body Works. This is not a promotion for them. I have my candles, or I'll journal, which is something that I used to do every single day. But, you know, as I've gotten older, I don't journal as much. I might go in there once a week to talk about certain things, but I also don't want my journal to be, a culmination of everything negative that's going on in my life. So I
Mhm.
make sure that, hey, you can write about your stressors, but let's also talk about ways that you can change it. Let's talk about ways that things that you can implement into your life so that you're not feeling this way for a long, extended amount of time.
Absolutely. And really, I think the big point here, I want to just drive home to our listeners or watchers, whoever, whether you're watching or listening to this, you got to find a healthy balance of what realistically works for you.
Mm-hmm.
We are not about the one size fits all cookie cutter approach. That drives your girl
Mm-hmm.
up the wall. And so I want you
Right.
to really tap into what works for you right now. And just remember that whatever you choose to do now, I guarantee you it's going to be way different in another
Yeah,
season, like next year. For
absolutely.
me, last year, I was really pushing and prioritizing my physical self-care because I
Mm-hmm.
was sick all year long of 2021 with undiagnosed IBS. I did not get diagnosed with my IBS until December of 2021.
Mm-hmm.
So going to multiple doctors, doing the elimination diet, then eventually having some procedures done to get the diagnosis, and then finding out and getting on medication to start calming my body down. That was the focus last year. This year, I've noticed that the big focus has been just my mental, emotional, and spiritual
Mm-hmm.
self care. You know, I've tapped out, burned out a little bit in
Right.
that department. I need the support. So, getting plugged up back into where we go to church on Sundays frequently and
Mm-hmm.
do my mom's connect group and classes and have Wednesday night dinners with our church. That's been
Mm-hmm.
important. 30 to 45 minutes with the Lord. First thing in the
Absolutely.
morning, I come into the office. So I got my cup of
Mm-hmm.
coffee, my water. and my journaling stuff, and I
You're
listened to my
you're drinking,
lesson.
Melissa. You're drinking coffee and you have IBS. What is going on? What's going
I let myself have one cup at
You
least.
know,
Okay.
and you know what? You are absolutely right. That's another self-care tip.
Mhm.
There's going to be people who don't have a chronic illness who want to tell you what you should be doing. If you don't
Mhm.
have it, don't talk to me about it. I've
Exactly.
gotten so much advice on, oh, why don't you just go vegan? First of all, everything vegan is not healthy.
Mhm.
Second of all, veganism doesn't work for everyone. So let's stop
Right.
trying to jump on the bandwagon and let's stop giving medical advice when we are not MDs. And even with MDs, they might not know everything. And if you have a really good doctor, they will tell you that. So the
Yeah.
doctors that I have had, I've gone to them over the last couple of years that I've been in New York, but just over the last decade when I was living in Ohio, I had an amazing OBGYN and I just compiled this entire list of things that I can and cannot eat. For someone, it might look like, oh my God, she's really rigid. But for me, I know that I have endometriosis. My reproductive system is backwards. There's certain things that I cannot eat, certain things that I can't eat. It might be good for the fibroids, but it'll be terrible for the endometriosis and the
Yep.
adenomyosis. So I have to find a middle ground. So I know for my body, I test things on Friday. I love eating new foods. So I test things on Friday. If I'm sick until Sunday, I know this is something I'm eliminating from my diet. So by Monday, I'm feeling okay. And I had to do that over the course of a few years to find out what works for me. And things might change over the course of years. Like moving back to New York, I got really excited being back here, thinking, oh my God, I can go back to my ethnic food. And I did for the first month or so. And you know what? I was also in bed for 2 weeks. And I remember my
Yeah.
mom saying, like, you should not be eating these things. You know, you should have. But I miss them. Sometimes you really have to indulge. I will have a little snacky snack every now and then. And it is what it is. I know what it's going to do to my body, but I'm going to have it anyway. Because with a chronic
Right.
illness, it takes away from your life, whether we want to believe it or not. It takes away from your life. There's certain things that you have to readjust and certain things you have to work around. And there's the grieving process of, I used to be so active. I used to be able to eat what I wanted. I used to be able to stay up late at night. Once that chronic illness starts kicking in, there's so many things you have to change. So there's a grieving process about who you used to be and who you are now. And what can I do in order to add more fulfilling things into my life? So every now and then I will have a snack. I found snacks that will not aggravate my stomach. I found things that I can do that don't start the onset of, any sort of flare ups. And
Hmm.
just being a caregiver, I have to make sure that what I'm doing here with my chronic illness is not affecting how I'm caregiving. Because there are
Right.
times when I am just so exhausted from the chronic illness, I don't want to take care of anyone else but myself. Because
Hmm.
when we find ourselves taking care of someone else before us, the flare up is going to last even longer than it should.
Exactly.
And that's something that we shouldn't be doing. So once again, especially if you're in a relationship, just being able to communicate to your significant other, hey, today I just can't do this, I'm not feeling well. And also for that person to understand, okay, what are some of the things that I can actually do for myself depending on what the chronic illness is? What
Hmm.
is it that I can actually do for myself? And if that person is completely incapacitated, it's important to get a home health aid. There's
Yes.
so many insurances that will provide a home health aid, and also having additional insurance on top of your regular insurance that can provide for a home health aid, and especially cultural differences as well. Hey, is there someone in the family that can help me take care of the individual that I need to take care of? It's important for us to utilize our community. I
Hmm.
know, once being African, I have so many cousins back home that actually want to come and help and assist me. God, I'm praying that this actually happens, because then it will alleviate some of the stress of being a caregiver. But everyone else doesn't have that opportunity. So once again, just leaning on the additional insurance to get a home health aid, or someone that you trust that can come into your home and help you with the day-to-day activities as a caregiver.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. And I, in my healthcare career, I primarily
Mm-hmm.
worked in long-term care facilities. The elderly was my passion. I
Mm-hmm.
did do a year and a half as a home health aide, and I did do a year in a adult disabilities institution.
Mm-hmm.
Both weren't exactly the most ideal fit for me, just either the environment or being able just to have insurance and enough hours to work and pay the bills was the problem.
All right.
But I do want to say home health is an awesome resource. Hospice is even a good is even a good option. Okay. Hospice
Mm-hmm.
doesn't mean that they're going to go tomorrow. Hospice means like within 6 months to a year they could go, and having
Mm-hmm.
that leg up with extra resources that are higher up than say that just the general home health aid or agency is an
Mm-hmm.
awesome resource. And there's more resources within the hospice and home health that I want people to be aware of because it's really helpful. They can help with groceries. They can help with light
Mm-hmm.
housekeeping. They can help with light errands. They can help with the ADL. So if you are physically tapped out
Mm-hmm.
of caregiving, they can help with bathing, dressing, feeding,
Yes, absolutely.
transfers. They can help with that. Rights to medical appointments. But then also, too, they have, because
Mm-hmm.
I know I've had family that have had to tap into the other resources of the
Mm-hmm.
social worker and the counselor and the
Yes.
chaplain. Most home health agencies and hospice agencies do have like a social worker, a chaplain. So for different communities of faith, for different
Mm-hmm.
just dealing with the again the emotional and mental impact and
Mm-hmm.
spiritual impact of the your loved one's health declining. Those
Yeah,
are awesome resources to tap in, and you get them free.
absolutely.
You're paying for the service of having the home health team with having a
Mm-hmm.
doctor, a home health aide, a nurse, and then PT and OT, a physical therapist
Mm-hmm.
or occupational therapist will even do home visits as well if that's aligned with your loved one's caregiving needs for
Right.
care, kind of care.
And I don't think we give a lot of credit to the wraparound services that are provided for individuals who are caregivers and individuals who have
Hmm.
a chronic illness. There's so many individuals that are involved in taking care of you, from the PT, OT, case managers, social workers, therapists, your doctors. And I
Hmm.
always, well, from my perspective, with the doctors who have helped me along my journey after my second surgery, it was a whole team of individuals. It was three, how do I say this? Three surgeons, and they're from different departments working on different parts of my system. And I just remember being so grateful for that. And spirituality is something I definitely hold on to get me through this journey as having a chronic illness and being a caregiver. I made sure to send out gift baskets to the doctors who actually were just so informative and supportive throughout the process. It's important that you find someone who will actually support you through this, not just as the person who has the illness, but also as the caregiver. The caregiver wants to be in the appointments. Be in the
Hmm.
appointment. Don't let the individuals stay there by themselves. If you are the person
Right.
caring for them or you're a support team, be in the appointments with them, because sometimes with having a chronic illness, you might zone out while the doctor's talking to you. Sometimes
Hmm.
you just don't want to listen. And that's our defense mechanism of, oh God, is something else happening today? So the
Yeah.
person sitting next to you can take these notes. The person sitting next to you can record the session with the permission of the doctor that's in front of you. So when you get home, you can review all of these things and make the best informed decision for you and your family. So there's
Yes.
so many things that go into just chronic illness and caregiver life that we don't necessarily talk about, because sometimes it's also not the easiest thing to talk about.
Right. And I want to touch on too, like in terms of self-care, what can
Mm-hmm.
you access online? Um,
Ooh, there's
there's
so
coaches,
many things on.
there's
The,
so many things, right?
yeah.
So listening to this call right now, guys,
Mm-hmm.
obviously, if you do need help with your marriage and the impacts of a chronic illness, definitely check out my girl Francesca. She's awesome and she can help you. She's available. If you're more of a younger mom and a
Mm-hmm.
spousal and who has had to leave the workforce and you're adjusting to being a stay-at-home mom unplanned, like what happened to
Yeah.
me, I got you. You know, I,
Mm-hmm.
I I want to come alongside you and help you figure out a realistic routine that
Right.
works for you in creating a routine around your home for dealing with the day-to-day things, errands,
Mm-hmm.
laundry, whatever, and balancing time for yourself and balancing time to make sure that you keep your cup full for
Mm-hmm.
caring for your spouse. Because every chronic illness is different. Like, obviously,
Right.
a situation, just to be brutally honest, I have a high functioning spouse. As long
Mm-hmm.
as he's not in a seizure, he can feed, dress, and bathe himself, and he can play with our little girl. Now, the only thing that he really can't do anymore, per safety, is he can't drive because we never know when a seizure is going to happen, and
Mm-hmm.
he's had to pull back his hours at work to be able to allow himself time to rest because stress is the number one killer for his illness with
Mm-hmm.
epilepsy. Stress, lack of sleep, lack of nutrition, and missing your meds are big triggers for triggering seizure activity. So that's important. But I'm speaking to the mom that might have a bedridden spouse. obviously you're going to be
Mm-hmm.
doing a lot more of the physical hands-on care, bathing, dressing, turning, repositioning if they're really, using a mechanical lift if need be to get them in and out of bed. It's going to wear you down more from the physical side. So for
Mm-hmm.
you, your realistic routine might really encompass outsourcing a lot more. Laundry, how or not laundry, excuse me, errands like groceries,
Mm-hmm.
yard work, if you can, even caregiving duties. Do you need to, is it realistically time that you need to help you find a healthier set balance with your caregiving and motherhood journey to access the wraparound resources like
Right.
Francesca and I are talking about, like home health, hospice, even if it's just but even if it's just for a break, because let's face it, we need a break. Could
Mm-hmm.
someone in your family, could someone in your circle of friends, could somebody in your church come in for maybe a 2 hour window so you can go out and have some me time without the kids, without worrying about your
Right.
spouse, so you can get that needed break in? Or even if it's, or even just to nap.
Mm-hmm.
Let's face it, if you're, I know when I was starting out with this journey, I had an almost 1 year old, and oh yeah, if she, and she still is like that too. If she doesn't get her naps in, even at 3, she can melt down. Maybe you need to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Can someone come
Absolutely.
over and be here? Can you have another adult come over and be at your home so you can get that nap and have someone be here if they need to do something, or even just to wake you up if something goes on.
Mm-hmm.
But you have that cushion of being able to just have a break and just sleep if need be, because sleep is important too. But it's going to
Absolutely.
look different for everybody. There's no one size fits all. There's no
Mm-hmm.
perfect plan that either Francesca or I can give you. The idea here is that we want you getting creative and thinking about, okay, what does my
Mm-hmm.
situation look like? How can I access the right kind of resources that work for me? Is it online Facebook support groups? Is it getting back into my community faith? Is it hiring a coach or mentor like myself for one-on-one coaching support, or even just one-on-one sessions group wise with your spouse or significant other with Francesca, a resource like that. And again, via online, because as caregivers or people who deal with chronic illness, our immune systems are at risk. We can tap out
Mm-hmm.
a lot faster than the
Absolutely.
average person who does not have a chronic illness.
Right.
And I know for me, I'm having to look at it two ways. I have
Mm-hmm.
IBS and hypothyroidism, so if I bottom out, then my immune system can crash and I can get sick. But then I have a 3 year old. I have
Mm-hmm.
my husband who has epilepsy, so his immune system is compromised. And we do live with my dad too, so I have to think about him.
Mm-hmm.
So there's multiple sides that you have to consider how you access these resources and what realistically is safest for not just you, but for your family. But above
Right.
all, we want you to prioritize your self care, because if you
Right.
tap out and burn out, like Francesca said, the flare up's going to last a lot
Mm-hmm.
longer, and we don't want
Right.
that.
Yeah, so
So,
I just wanted to provide a few resources before we actually wrap up, especially if people are interested in therapy services in general. There's
absolutely.
Psychology Today that you can go on and put in your filters and look for the type of therapist that you want. There's also Therapy Den, and specifically working with the BIPOC population. There's therapy for Black girls, therapy for Black men. There's so many websites that you can actually go to, melanin and mental health as well, for just looking for therapists, putting in your filters and seeing what therapist will suit your needs, and also making sure that you schedule the consultation to make sure that this is the person you actually want to do therapy with. So the therapy is the number one support system. The number two is utilizing your support system of friends and family. Sometimes as caregivers, families might let us down. That's the realistic thing of this. They don't have to deal with it. They can dip in and do something for about a couple of hours and then dip right out, but you were the person that is there for an extended amount of time. So it's
Pretty
important
much.
for you to have that support system that you can talk to, which brings me to Facebook groups. There's so many Facebook groups out there for multiple roles that we play, for caregivers, for individuals with chronic illness. And you might draw so many connections with individuals in that group. I'm in a support group for women with endometriosis. Some of my closest friends were made in that support group. And we can talk about just the effects of this illness on our entire lives, but also
Mm-hmm.
making sure that we are staying vibrant as human beings, because we're still living. Like
Right?
we can vent about our illness, but we can also make sure that we are trying to live our best lives. And also, number three, taking time to yourself. You don't always need to be around people. Sometimes being around people can be a little bit annoying. So just taking time to yourself, literally yourself. I know
Hmm.
sometimes for some extroverts, it's very hard for them to sit alone, but it's also important for us to understand, why can't I sit alone? Is there something going on with me that I don't want to be with myself? I try to tell people that quite often. Like, why do you always need to be around people? One thing the pandemic also highlighted is that sometimes being by yourself and being alone can be the best gift that you can give yourself. You
Hmm.
don't always need to be around people, especially if you are under high stress almost every single day. Once again, I like to plan my self care Fridays and Saturdays, things that I can do by myself and not always being around the person that I'm taking care of or being on the phone or texting. There's certain things that I need to do for myself in order to refill my cup.
Hmm. Absolutely. And I want to say too that it's okay if you leverage online services. You do not have to be in person, like going to a brick and mortar place to get the resources,
Mm-hmm.
okay? Because again, going back to that piece about our immune systems, it is so important. Sometimes for some of us, we really need to stay home,
Mm-hmm.
and protect our immune system so we don't get contract and expose ourselves to something that we need, or
Mm-hmm.
we just physically don't have the energy to go to a brick and mortar place. I know for me, getting out of the house
Absolutely.
once in a while is good for my sanity. It really is, especially when
Yeah.
it's not a medical appointment or something errand
Mm-hmm.
related. Like, so again, going to church on Wednesday night for the week. Whoo, praise the Lord, I love it. So
Mm-hmm.
do something for you in a way that really feeds your soul and your mind and your body in a way that is realistic for you. What do you need? Are you an extrovert? Are you an introvert? Whatever you need, I want you just tapping into it. We want you just tapping into that.
Mm-hmm.
And I know for me, some of my best friends that I have now, I've never met them in person, but I video chatted with them.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in the same and similar groups, and they're lifelong friends. You
Mm-hmm.
don't have to physically be in person. It would be nice. I mean, believe me, I want to see my girls and give them a hug,
Mm-hmm.
but in this season, just being able to have that friendship and that connection and
Mm-hmm.
that bond over X, Y, and Z situation has been the best thing for me because I have that support. One of the biggest things I teach, I know in my program, is reaching out for support and building your support network. And that does encompass your medical team to help make sure
Mm-hmm.
your spouse is being cared for, and your own medical team so you yourself are healthy. So not skipping those wellness visits. If you've been skipping,
Mm-hmm.
go schedule your appointment this
Right.
week. Okay, Self-Care Monday. So do it. And spiritual, your community of faith,
Mm-hmm.
support, like what we've been talking about, whether it's therapy or a coach or a mentor, or even just a
Mm-hmm.
support group for dealing with the said situation. Again, like-minded people. We do better when we're not dealing with people that are just looking in and they don't understand the situation.
Mm-hmm.
When we're dealing with chronic illness, we really need to be with somebody that actually gets what the heck we're going through, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because we need someone will actually understand that concept of just letting us vent, non-judgmental, and
Mm-hmm.
not being the one size fits all approach of like, oh, I know exactly what to do. And going back, I
Right.
forgot to say this when you were talking about this, Francesca, but what you were saying about trigger foods, I'm the
Mm-hmm.
same way. I used to eat vegan, and it's what helped us kick infertility, and we conceived our
Mm-hmm.
daughter, and I'm thankful for that. But now in the season that I am in with my IBS, I have even more trigger foods. So not all the vegan foods that I used to eat, I can't eat them anymore because they're a
Yeah.
trigger. So
Because there's a
I'm
lot of
grain
crap
free.
in there.
I'm soy food. I'm grain free. I'm soy free. I'm dairy free. I'm meat
Mm-hmm.
free. I'm gluten free. And even the gluten
Yeah.
free foods that I used to be able to eat, I can't eat because it has
Yeah.
rice in it, and rice is a trigger
Same.
for me.
Mm-hmm.
So again, I love what you said about that, about I don't see it as, oh, my life is over because I can't eat X, Y, and Z anymore. I'm
Mm-hmm.
like, well, okay, I have an illness. It does suck and it's not fun. And I do miss and grieve the foods I used to be able to eat before. But at the same time, I don't want to be stuck in the bathroom having attacks. It's not fun because I
Yeah.
have a mom, because I'm a mother, I'm a caregiver, I'm a business owner, I'm a daughter, I'm an aunt, I'm a sister. I want to be able to show up in those roles and enjoy life to the best of my ability and fulfill my duties to the best of my
Mm-hmm.
ability. And I
Mm-hmm.
can't do that if I indulge in things that I should not eat, and it impacts how I'm able to spend my time during the day.
Yeah.
So
Mm-hmm.
it's so again, even with just whatever chronic illness that you have, guys, for those of you listening and watching, staying within those boundaries is
Mm-hmm.
not something bad. Think of it as something good. Those boundaries of avoiding those triggers prior to keeping your cup full, like we've talked about today, all these things go into being able to manage your balance, or excuse me, finding a healthy balance as a mom, as a caregiver, as a spouse, as a person just living with a chronic illness long term in a very healthy way. We don't want you tapping out and burning out physically, mentally, emotionally, or spiritually. It's
Right.
just not good. So,
Right.
anyway, this has been so good. I am so excited for those of you who will be re-listening to this later,
Mm-hmm.
because this stuff is stuff that we don't talk about enough. And
Yeah.
I'm so thankful for Dr. Owu coming on for 2 episodes of the Caregiver Coffee Chat podcast. I hope that those of you who are listening on YouTube, Spotify, Anchor, that you guys will follow Dr. Owu and her work, and also give my girls some love. If you know of another person in your life that's dealing with a chronic illness and could use some support, or maybe is in a marriage and their spouse is recently diagnosed with a chronic illness, and they both could use some support in a non-biased, non-judgmental, safe space, definitely refer Dr. Owu to them, because she can help. So, speaking of which, where can we find you besides? I know you're on Instagram, but
Yes.
share with my listeners, some other places that they can find you and your amazing resources and work.
So you can also find me on my website, www.fkltherapyandconsultation.com. On Instagram, FKO Therapy. I talk more about chronic illness and caregiver life. Don't forget, November is Caregiver Awareness Month. So I'll be putting
Yes.
out more content during November. And also on my LinkedIn, Francesca K. Owu. You can find me on there. I'm still, once again, talking about chronic illness and mental health overall, especially within the BIPOC population. But I'm also licensed in Maryland, New York, and Ohio. So if don't use social media as a means for therapy. So if you need to connect with me because you need to find a therapist in your state or in your area and you're finding it difficult, go ahead and shoot me a message, and it's something that we can have a consultation on, and we can look through some directories together to find someone who could be a good fit for you, schedule a consultation, and you can go along with your therapy.
Yeah. And I'm glad you mentioned consultations, because there are a lot, because I know personally for me too, there's been times where I'm trying to find somebody, and definitely the best option is to go with somebody that does offer a free call
Yes.
or free appointment, because then you can actually, before you spend any money, put it down and then not
You
be
can
able to
get
get
a
it
feel for the
back. Yeah,
person.
you can get
Right.
a feel and a vibe. So yeah, definitely look for consultations. If you are interested in learning more about what I do, with my online coaching business, I do offer free consultations as well. You can go to my website, programsmelissamiller2011.com/free support call. Links in my bio, and you can get a free 30-minute caregiver support call with me, and you can see if again with me as well, am I a right fit for you? Is what I have to offer a good fit for you, and finding a healthy balance and managing your motherhood and caregiving journey. And also, you can join the wait list right now. The wait list is open for my one-on-one coaching program, Finding Your Balance. It will be reopening doors on October 24th. I'm very excited. So links in my bio for that as well. And also, you can find that on my website again at programsmelissamiller2011.com. So anyway, thank you so much, Dr. Owu, for coming on. I really appreciate all the helpful insight that you've given to.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yes, it's been great to have you. So, and remember, everybody listening, that you're doing the best you can. Nobody knows your family better than you do. Give yourself grace on those hard mom caregiver days, and remember that you are enough. You are doing enough, and it is okay to ask for help. So I will see you in
Absolutely.
episode 3 with my next special guest. So stay tuned for details for that. And thank you so much for listening and watching, and have a great day.